There is a space in my heart where I find the truth. I find me in you, a truth beyond what you may see now. But when we are one, we bring more good about. No matter who or what you call yourself or where you come from, yeah. There is a place in this world with open arms right now. Welcome to love, welcome to peace, welcome to our community. Be who you are, let your light shine. We're so much more when we unite. You are welcome here. You are welcome here. I see with new eyes, allow and unfold, embrace and let go, trust the flow. There's a freedom in love when you follow your heart. Together we are stronger than we could ever be apart. No matter who or what you call yourself or where you come from, yeah. There is a place in this world with open arms right now. Welcome to love, welcome to peace, welcome to our community. Be who you are, let your light shine. We're so much more when we unite. You are welcome here. You are welcome here. Breathe in and out, slowly feel all that's around you, all that you feel, all that you know. Let it go. Welcome to love, welcome to peace, welcome to our community. Be who you are, let your light shine. We're so much more when we unite, yeah, when we unite, oh, we unite, yeah, yeah, when we unite, yeah, yeah. You are welcome here. Love is welcome here. Peace is welcome here. You are welcome here.
And we are back. We are here. You are welcome here. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, and good day to you wherever you are at this very moment in time. Thank you for tuning into yourself first and then tuning into the podcast Ade Presents Being You. And when you tune into yourself, you get to listen. When you listen, you're transformed. When you're transformed, we become a transformational agent. I am Ade, your transformational beingness artist. I'm also your transformational agent because that's what I do. That's one of the reasons I was created, to transform, to inspire, to empower, to teach, to be the place where God gets to reveal itself as love, as compassion, as understanding, and all the other stuff. Some of those are not so pretty, but you get to see God in it all, right? Welcome to another episode of Ade Presents Being You, Season 2, Episode 14. Today is Tuesday, August 4th, 2020. And we are assisting you back to yourself. This is a journey back to yourself. Being You is supporting you, reminding you to take a look at how you see yourself, how you see the world, how you see yourself in the world, and how you see the world in you. Because there is no separation. It all belongs. And if you're listening to the audio, check out Ade Presents Being You on YouTube. The YouTube channel is Life Conversations Media. And also you can find us at Being You Podcast. That's the Facebook page that's the handle, at Being You Podcast on Facebook. That's where we're hanging out. That's where we're doing what we're doing. Thank you all for being here. Thank you all for saying yes to life. Today's themes. Oh, okay. Thank you, India. I was like, what is that? That looks weird, but because I didn't do it. So that's right. Being You Podcast on Facebook. You can also find Being You Podcast on IG. So if you go there, go to Instagram, IG, and look for Being You. And, you know, my picture is the nature looking one. You might find another one, but I'm sure you can tell the difference. Yeah, I'm sure you can. But if you really want to look for it specifically, it is being.you.podcast. But once you type Being You Podcast, iTunes would do the rest. How's everyone doing? How are you feeling? Let us know. Share in the chat from where you're listening from. Maybe even start a watch party, because we're talking about something that we are all dancing with. And I'm not going to say too much about it because I can say too much sometimes. I think I have a way of looking at myself like that. But I can tell you now that the topic is generational trauma, which is also known as intergenerational trauma or transgenerational trauma. All the same. And Rev D's here. Rev D's here. I have come to learn now when Rev D is joining me and I start researching and thinking, I'm going to ask her this, I'm going to ask her that. And I hear this little voice saying, dude, you know Rev D's going to take you so deep. You have to come up with questions on the spot. So I'll have a little bit of easy focus about it. Like, okay, I got my questions, but she's going to answer all of it the first 5 minutes. And then I have to be an interviewer and say, okay, God, what else do I ask? But that's what I love, because I get to grow with the show. I get to grow with my guest. And Rev D is definitely somebody just when I think I got it. And it's like, yes. And I'm like, okay, more studying to do. She's in the house. Everything is fine. Let us know where you're listening from. I'm going to bring Rev D on. I'm going to read a little bit about her bio, just to give you an idea of who she is, what she's about. Reverend Deborah L. Johnson is a lifelong social justice activist with a passion for healing social, political, and cultural divides. Founder of Inner Light Ministries, board member of the Pachimama Alliance, and founding member with Michael Bernard Beckwith of Agape International Spiritual Center. She's the author of The Sacred Yes and Your Deepest Intent. You've heard me say it. Go get a copy if you don't have it, because it's the prescription and the medicine for times like this. I promise you, if you don't have it, those of you that have it, you know what I mean. Let me bring on my friend, my mentor, my midwife, my doula, looking good, and she's doing all this stuff, and she shows up like, "Hey, woke up like this." Hey, FD.
Hey there.
It's nice to see you.
It's good to see you. And welcome to everybody from wherever you are, whatever time that it is.
That's right. That's right. Whether it's live or archive. To find Rev D, her website address is, well, I'm not going to give you a home address, so you're only going to get the digital thing. You know, I ain't going in that kind of party. Okay, just in case. To find her online, DeborahLJohnson.org. Deborah with an H and an L. DeborahLJohnson.org. On Facebook, you can do handle is at Rev Deborah Johnson. On Instagram, is the same, Rev Deborah L. Johnson. And Twitter is at Deborah_Rev. But you can find her. She's everywhere present. And I'm grateful that she's here to take us deeper into places that has been waiting for us to show up. So Rev D, you know, I was thinking about this a few days ago. Like the last few months, when you joined me here, it almost feels like I haven't seen you in like 6-7 months. It's like something about these days are just so stretched out. Yeah. I'm like, well, she was here about 4 or 5 weeks ago, because I think we had 5 Tuesdays last month. How have you been? What is going on in the world? What have you been creating?
Well, you know, it has been something. And we are in an evolutionary growth spurt.
Yes.
There's an energetic vibration that's sped up. And, you know, we've been feeling this now for the past few years, and it just feels like it's kind of gotten off the chart now. With my own spirit letters, it says it's almost a ratio of 1 to 4. Where 1 week can feel like a whole month.
Yes.
And a month can feel like a whole quarter, like a whole season ago.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
It's like if this were summer, it's like, well, shoot, I didn't talk to you since spring.
Okay.
It feels like that kind of a something.
Yes. Yes.
You know, in my own life, I've been saying this, and it really is true, that since COVID and a few other things in my personal professional life, and around Inner Light and our center, it's like all my plans have been shattered. All of them. But my dreams are coming true. And that feels so good. My dreams are coming true. And there's so many exciting things that are going on. And one of the things that I'm most excited about is a real launching of my Letters from the Infinite series on a whole nother level. I've been teaming up and working with the Yana Van Zant, who's been using my work with her classes and now bringing me in to those classes, and she's going to start bringing me on some of her podcasts. And it just feels good. There's so many things that have been happening. That, and you know, since the George Floyd murder, there's been this kind of awakening in consciousness, and I've been doing an awful lot of training and speaking on social justice and what do we need to do to end racism and all of that. And there's been a receptivity in these past few months that, quite frankly, I haven't seen in my lifetime as a trainer. It's good. It's good to see.
Yeah, it definitely is. All right, let's jump in. Let me just acknowledge those in the chat room, because we're streaming on 3 different platforms. So I don't see all the comments. Quali, nice to see you. Ruth is in the house. New Jace is in the house in New Jersey. And she said she had a power outage. Sorry to hear that. Hope you're going to come back and join us. Russell is here. Yes. So we're talking about generational trauma. I'm holding on and I'm opening up because everybody actually don't put your seatbelt on. You're already safe. You're already secure. Allow yourself to surrender to what's to happen. Generational trauma, which is also known as intergenerational trauma or transgenerational trauma. And what I want to do here, Rev, is just, the way that I want to lay a foundation here just for listeners so we can have a place of taking off. And I want to just read a short sentence paragraph, well, not even a paragraph here, from a book of a friend of mine called Ancestral Blueprints. And the way she defines traumatic events, because it just kind of lays the foundation. Because sometimes I feel like if we say generational trauma and we talk about racism, some people might like, oh gosh, I can't deal with racism. But to just kind of narrow it down to the basic, and I find that this is one of the easy ones. So Lisa Iverson is the author. The book is Ancestral Blueprints, really good book, and it's another book that's good for times like this. And she wrote, according to the National Center for Post-Traumatic Stress Disorder, a traumatic event is something horrible and scary that you see or that happens to you. During this type of event, you think that your life or others' lives are in danger. You may feel afraid or feel that you have no control over what is happening, at the basic level. And there are many ways that happens. And personally, I feel like some of what we're dealing with, what has happened is like the generational trauma is now something in us to soften up. Our heart is softened so we can see. And I've also experienced sometimes a conversation as if, oh, we have generational trauma. That's why we'll never succeed. Now here's another baggage we got to carry. And for me, it's like also having compassion for that kind of conversation. But so I know you're ready to go. I'm not even going to dare ask you a question. I'm just going to throw it over to you because I can feel you. Like, come on. Powered up.
It is an interesting subject. And there's so many different ways to take a look at it. So in my mind, I'm kind of parceling it out. Let's just say. There's the kind of trauma that's intergenerational in that every generation is up against and experiencing the same thing. Mm-hmm. So there's a repeat of it. Yeah. There's other kinds of trauma that are legacy, mm-hmm. where the remnants and the residual of it mm-hmm. is still lingering. Yes. There's other kinds of intergenerational trauma that are combinations of those things mm-hmm. and that are so deeply hidden that you don't even realize right. that it's impacting as deeply as it is. Mm-hmm. So there's some stuff that's like up in the face, yeah, and it's the subject of conversation and discussion, and then there's other stuff that's just, it's like insidious that it's there. So there's all these different, and that's not an exhaustive list. There's all these different kinds of ways in which it shows up. Yes. And there are a couple of things that I want to say about this to just start off the discussion. One is that so in the inner, so in the outer, as above, so below, that the macro and the micro are just the same thing in different levels. So what we call the macro is just the micro supersized, and vice versa. The micro is just the macro at a more individual level. So everything that we're saying now is going to be true, whether it's at the smallest micro level, intergenerational, let's say in your own personal family, as it's also going to be true at the larger, more collective level, like national families, so to speak, or racial groups. And I say that to say that as we're discussing this, think about it on different levels, and there may be some level where you relate to it more. So I may be discussing something at a macro level, like a racism or some kind of war trauma or something like that. But think about it in terms of your own home. Think about it in terms of your family and the things that you've seen happen in your family, or it might be vice versa. So don't think that it's got to be confined to either a large arena or a small arena. The same principles are working everywhere. There's not a different gravity for a rocket ship than a tennis ball. It's all the same thing. A symphony or a little harmonica. It's all music. Just breathe that in. Another thing to keep in mind is that everything is energy. Everything is energy. Energy is neither created nor destroyed. It only changes form. Why is that important? It is important because we don't get rid of anything. There's nothing that's gone or done, so to speak. It may not be outwardly expressing, but that doesn't mean that it's gone. These days we talk about the cloud. And it just amazes me how everybody's trusting and storing all of their data and all of their information in this cloud. They don't know where it is. They don't know where to find it, but they are trusting that when they need to retrieve something, yes, it's in the cloud. Okay, well, this cloud is replicating consciousness. Mm-hmm. This cloud is representing life. Mm-hmm. And it just amazes me that people think I'm like, woo, when I start talking about the ethers and consciousness and everything's energy, but they accept it for the cloud.
And pay for the cloud.
Exactly.
They don't have access to.
All of their life to the cloud.
Yes. Here, take it.
Exactly. So, and I can wipe it off here because I know it's safe. I can always get it later in the cloud. Mm. This is how it is in consciousness. Mm. This is it. Everything's in the cloud. Mm. Nothing's lost. Mm. And anytime you want to tap into it, it's there. But I'm going to put a little spin on that. Even when you don't necessarily want to tap into it, it's still there if you resonate with it. Mm-hmm. Let that sink in for a moment. Yes. You may not be, it's just like trouble. You may not be like looking for trouble. But if your consciousness is in that mindset, it kind of reminds me of in my cheating days. And I'd be like, well, baby, I don't know how it happened. I don't know what happened. It's like, well, did you give her your number?
Let's just bring it down to the bare minimum.
Yeah. Well, did you get her? Well, yeah. Well, did you call? Well, you know, and then you're wondering how it happened.
The answer is in the cloud. It's all in there.
Yeah. So when we start vibrating that and resonating with that, if I were to give an example, it'd be like when you're raising a child, you want to make sure that the kid isn't around quote unquote bad influences or like the wrong quote unquote the wrong people. Because you know, if they start hanging out with certain crowds, they're going to start developing those habits.
Mm-hmm.
So we got to pay attention to what we're vibrating with. See, we got to pay attention to what we're resonating with. We need to pay attention because like vibrations magnify. I like the way that Joe Dispenza puts it when he talks about our brain. That he says, the thoughts that fire together, wire together.
Yes.
Okay. The thoughts that fire together, wire together. That literally every time there's a thought, there's a neural pathway that's developed. There are little chemicals and whatnot that are released. And it becomes like an intricate spider web, so to speak. So that when thoughts are repeated and the thoughts are reinforced, it's like going from a little twine to a thick rope to something that's really strong and sturdy. This is how we have memory to begin with. We're here talking about generational memory. The way that memory is created through these neural pathways, these networks of connections in our brains that fire and wire together. But it's not just the brain. Our new science is beginning to show us that our heart thinks and that things actually hit our heart before they hit our brain. So for every thought, there is a reaction within the body. This is what we've come to know of as cellular memory. Cellular memory. So that even now, as I'm working with the trainer to get like knots out of my back, you know, or my legs or stuff, it's like traumas, emotional traumas, physical traumas. I've had some whiplashes in my life. It stays in the body. It stays stuck in the body. And what's more is that a lot of times what we call hereditary tendencies, like has your family had cancer? You know, does diabetes run in your family? Does this thing or that thing? What we know is that these quote unquote hereditary tendencies are not just a matter of genetics. Okay. It's the way that your lineage has metastasized consciousness. Okay. So to let that sink in for a moment. From generation to generation, we adapt. Whether it's, you know, webbed fingers or you know, hair color or, you know, these things, we're constantly adapting. It could be the trauma of the weather. intense heat or, whatever. But over time, we adjust to these things,
Yes.
so to speak. So when we talk about this idea of generational trauma, there's a lot of reinforcement. is my point here. It isn't just, oh, this one thing happened and there's a story about it and we just keep telling ourselves a story. It's that, no, we become the embodiments of this trauma. And we know, for anybody who's doubting what I'm saying, we know that if a person focuses too much on negative stuff, it causes disease. Anybody who's really healed from cancer or something like that, they didn't heal just from chemotherapy.
Right.
They had an overhaul in their life, their priorities, their attention, diet, all of it. Because it all comes together. So we are complex and we're sharing things. We're passing things down generation to generation with how we have responded to things.
Right.
It's not the end of the story. It doesn't mean we're just stuck with it, but you can't heal what you don't feel. And unless you're willing to own it and recognize it, you can't do anything about it. So when I talk about this thing about like things being in the cloud, to really heal generational trauma, it's going to also mean that we have to relinquish our attachment to the time-space continuum as we know it.
Yes.
Okay, so just settle in for a second, take a breath.
Maybe put the seatbelt on this time.
It's just a construct. I know it's ruling our lives, but any good scientist will tell you there really isn't such a thing as time like we know it. So when I say that we have to move beyond our time-space continuum, the part I'm most specifically referencing is this notion of the past, the present, and the future, as though they are mutually exclusive. There is no so-called past, just present, and just future. Everything is energy. And what we call now is a convergence of this. What we call, quote unquote, now is an integration of the so-called past, the so-called present, and the so-called future. The analogy that I use with this that I think helps people get it is the analogy of a seed. Okay. What we know with the seed is that each after its own kind. A carrot seed is a carrot seed. Carrot seed is not an apple seed. Carrot's never going to produce an apple. Apple's never going to produce a carrot. Each after its own kind. Breathe that in for a second. Each after its own kind. So if I have an apple seed in my hand here, what do I have in my hand? I don't have just a seed. That seed is encoded with the entire essence of appledom, applehood. It's all in that seed. That the DNA of apples since the beginning of time is sitting in this one seed. So when this one seed blossoms, what it's blossoming is not just itself. This notion that we have about the individual and I'm just standing on my own 2 feet, my own 2 bootstraps, it's poppycock. You know, all of us come from someplace. We are all begotten. We are all begotten. So this seed is a representation of all its past lineage. At the same moment, this present moment, this seed is what it is. It's a seed. It's filled with all the potentiality of the future as well. So it's how it exists now, and encoded in this seed is all of the DNA of its past, but also encoded in this seed is all of the apples for the future. Wow. In this seed, every moment is a seed. Every moment is a seed. Every moment is filled with the cloud up until that point, with everything that's going on in the present around all of that, and the potentiality for the future. It's all in there. Now, I know this has been a very long-winded intro, but I feel like our inability to understand these things is what prevents us from being able to understand or react to generational trauma. When we don't get that everything is energy. When we don't get that things metastasize into form, that consciousness takes place into form. And just like it's going to your individual consciousness, it's going to manifest in your individual body. At the collective level, it's going to manifest in our collective body. Whether it's our body politic, our economic body, like whatever that is, it's like we have a societal health.
Yes.
Just like we have a personal health. It's all here. It's all happening at the same time. And if you're dismissive, oh, they need to just get over that. Or, you know, why are they still talking about you? You don't get it. You're not understanding how the minor energy works.
Yes. Take a breath. I love the idea and the reminder, and maybe for some people it's first time hearing that, as above, so below. And what you're saying here is, you know, I can tell a story about, oh, generational trauma because it's what happened in my family. And so does other people have their own stories. And we're not in a vacuum. So how I'm showing up, my own energy vibration intermingles, interconnects, interrelates with theirs. So we create all kind of different things. So we may even create more of what we say we're trying to heal based on how we're dealing with it, because we just focus on the past and we're forgetting that we're a seed that has a vision for the future.
Exactly.
And
yes.
Go ahead.
And what we don't understand is that because there is not this distinct past, present, and future, we can heal the past. Not only can we heal the past, I contend it is every generation's responsibility to heal the past. Whether it is your personal past,
yes,
or whether it is our collective past.
That's it.
And this idea that, oh, something happened, it's done, it's over with, there's nothing that can happen with it. No, that's just not true. But it means that we have to have the courage to face it and tackle it. And I want you to hear what I'm saying. I'm not just saying that you simply stop the pattern so that it doesn't happen anymore. When you do that, you don't really get the healing, because that's just a shift in behavior. And it's still going to come out in some kind of way. It's like when you hear me say, we never really ended slavery. We didn't ever end it in the United States as a moral issue. It's still on the books. It just morphed. The 13th Amendment in the Constitution says slavery and involuntary servitude will not exist in any of our jurisdictions except as punishment for a crime of which you have been duly convicted. So we went from justification for slavery being just because of the birth of your blackness to turning blackness itself into a crime. So this whole criminal thing, and it's not just about blackness. This is why we still have sex trafficking and and this stuff all over the world, because we haven't ended it.
Right.
But you can, and I contend that you must. One of the new things that I'm working on is a racial truth and reconciliation project. Where I'm working with some of my colleagues for us to have some public, really courageous conversations about the traumas.
Yes.
And just naming it. This is beyond apology. When people hear truth and reconciliation, they think it's, all it's my fault, and I'm gonna get beat up, and I've got to take all the shame and the blame and whatnot. No, it's like going to couples counseling. Couples counseling is like a truth and reconciliation.
It's rough.
Where, okay, this is what's going on with you, and this is what's going on with me. And as you mentioned earlier, Ade, everything is energy that happens with each other. If we're arguing or we're fighting, it's both of us. We're in it together. There's something that we're each bringing to the table here that's keeping this thing going. So if we wanted to shift, then I'm going to have to shift too. I can't just point my finger at you.
That's it.
and say you were wrong, you were bad, you got to make up for it. Whatever is going on is an energetic dance between us. And I haven't seen the brave enough conversations about this dance that we're doing racially, cross races. And it's time to bust this sucker open.
I'm so with you.
So yeah, and you were high on the list to be part.
I am so with you.
Conversations. Yes. And it's not just for the present. Somebody asked me on one of these shows I've been doing recently. They said, how do you explain racism to a child? That all of this stuff going on, with George Floyd and Black Lives Matter. And I said, here's what you say to a child. You assure the child that everybody is equal and valuable. All of us, regardless of who we are and where and all of the rest of that. And that includes them. And then you explain, but we haven't always acted like that. This is how it is, but we've done some things that went against that. And you know what? We got to go fix that. We just have to go clean it up. That's what you say. And it's like that. This pointing the finger and where did it come from, and well, it wasn't my fault, and it's like it doesn't matter.
The energy's still there, right? The vibration's still there.
It's still there. It's like, I'm going to leave the smoke in my house. Well, I didn't put the smoke in there.
Right. I didn't set the house on fire.
It's our responsibility to clean up the air.
Yes.
To clean up water. To clean up everything. I was raised in Girl Scouts. And it was very simple. It was the concept that the native populations have done all over the world. You leave the place better than you found it. It ain't that deep.
It's not complicated. Yeah.
And that it's your pleasure to do it. You're not just putting some false boundary on how much I'm going to do and how much is my responsibility, and well, I didn't do it, and don't look at me and like I didn't do it and I didn't do it. It doesn't matter, because we're all a part of it.
Totally.
We're all a part of it. So if we want to get beyond these generational traumas, it means that we're all going to have to assume responsibility for the fact that they're there. I know that's a tough one to swallow, but we all have to assume responsibility. Tomorrow I'm going to be starting another workshop. It's a couple of weeks. It's August 5th and August 12th. That's going to be looking at spiritual tools for social political times. And we're going to be using 3 letters from my book, The Sacred Yes. And if you don't have a copy of the book, if you register, we'll send you these letters, an electronic word version of them. And I love how in some of these letters, they're explaining that there really is only one of us here. There's no like them over there. There's not like the good one and the bad one. That there really is only us. And this little twist, it says a lot of you get into this habit of feeling like, well, I didn't have anything to do with that, and that wasn't my fault, and I'm not thinking that way, and like my attention isn't over there. And it was explaining maybe that's how you're part of the problem. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Because you haven't been thinking about it. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Because the subject is not being graced with your healing energy and your healing consciousness.
Yes.
So your blind eye and having nothing to do with it may be part of the problem. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You're thinking it makes you exempt, but it's actually making you complicit.
That's right. That's right. There is no way out. We're all in it together.
We're all in it together. And how wonderful that is. Instead of it feeling like it's a burden, when we realize we have this enormous power to unleash energy, we have this enormous power to bear witness to each other's pain and break the chains. We have this extraordinary capacity. I want to share just a couple of generational trauma things, these moments that meant so much to me. And it was actually Black on Black trauma. So I spent a month in Ghana 10 years ago. In fact, if it wasn't for COVID, I'd be there now. With the Etherian Mission celebrating their 45-year anniversary. I was with them for their 35-year anniversary. Brother Ishmael Tete is their leader, founder and leader, and one of my colleagues and mentors. So I didn't have any appreciation when I went of how important and influential our role was as people, quote unquote, from the West. I traveled on my own, but I hooked up and went with the Agape contingency. And Beckwith and his wife at the time, and me and my wife at the time, both we all stayed at Tete's house. So we did all these tours. We were on the equivalent of like Good Morning Africa a couple of times, and hip hop radio, and the Palace, which is like the White House, and the tribal kings, and we were all these different places. We were treated like dignitaries, police escorts everywhere. Unbelievable. So before the King of Accra, when the British pulled out, they gave the land back to the tribal leaders. And the area of the capital, Accra, is controlled by the tribe, the Ga tribe. There are these different tribes, but they're the Ga tribe. And I'm before the king, and I even wasn't scheduled to speak, but I'm there with this contingency, and a lot of us are Africans from the diaspora. And I said to him, sometimes we feel like a motherless child. Like we're from the far, far away from home and our homeland. Yes. And those of us who are now mixed race feel even further sometimes, and we wonder, where do we really belong? There are all these messages from our country that even though we're citizens, the country's not for us. And then we're told these stories that Africa really doesn't want us either. The African nations, that we're not African enough. And I said, and we feel kind of lost. I said, and quite frankly, forgotten. I think his name was King Takatawa, if I'm not mistaken. And he just looked at me and said, basically, how can 20 million people be taken from a mother's breast? That were lost. I mean, that isn't like all of them that were taken. You know, those are just ones that like died at sea or whatever.
Right.
How? He said, how can we forget? He said, it's not in our nature as Africans to forget. He says, memories in the bones. We don't forget. And he was like, we haven't forgotten you. And we pray for you. And then he gave us libation. That stuff had to be 1,500 proof. That woo! I drank that stuff.
You saw your past lives and your future life.
It's like this
all in one.
things started coming out of my head. And you know what? It was like putty. And it sealed a hole in my heart. It sealed a hole in my heart. And I remember how upright I was for like the next 60 days or something. I mean, you couldn't talk to me. I mean, I was just, boom, just what?
You walk around going, I wish you would. I wish you would.
Like, it was like, I am the Watusi with my little yellow face. Hi, yellow face.
I double dog dare you. Come on.
And close to that same time, another friend that comes here from Burkina Faso, which is the nation that's just north of Ghana. I have a deep connection with him. He comes to the Santa Cruz area a lot. And I've developed a relationship with his parents, whom I haven't met. And his father is the tribal king of like where he is. And he told me to gather together at the center the people of African descent, because his mother had a message. And his mother apologized to us. You know, we were sold into slavery by other Black Africans. We think of slavery as like just the white people. No, it was this whole business trade that was going on. They knew exactly who they were selling because of their skills and all of the rest of that. And she apologized. She apologized for the role of her ancestors in selling us into slavery and let us know that we could always come back home. We just cried. It was an apology that I didn't even know I needed, or what. It never had even occurred to me. The president of Ghana got on TV and apologized. and said that they didn't know. Slavery's not new, but in Ghana, it was like an indentured servitude for 7 years. And then you got out and you were required to marry into the family. So it wasn't, he said they had no idea what was happening to us across the seas. And then he offered, and I think pretty much all of us, but surely those of us who are African American, dual citizenship that I think still exists, that you can come back. And they were trying to get people to like come back and retire to Africa. And I'm bringing these up to say that something shifted. The traumas of this past, something got released within me. Something got healed of a connection to the past that sort of let it rest and let it be. Even this understanding that they didn't understand. Let me let go of a lot of stories and stuff. And it's never too late. Because we're still carrying this stuff like around with us.
Yes.
And I specifically chose this because it's Black on Black. It's not, like good guys, bad guys, and, the evil, whatever. The trauma's the trauma.
Trauma is the trauma. And Rev D, because it's more than two, but there's so many things that you've said. And my mind is just like, I don't know, it's doing something. When you tell that story, or just, this was happening for me. So when we talk about generational trauma, and was always like, the conversation about, I didn't do anything. I don't know slaves. My parents didn't do nothing. I don't know anything about it. The things that we reject, even beyond slavery, is the stories that also get missed is how Native Americans were treated, slaughtered, the California genocide, children removed, and the rape. But when I bring it to the African American story, it's like there are people alive today whose maybe grandparent or great grandparents was lynched. There are people alive today, maybe grandparent or great grandparents did the lynching. That lives in the body too of the descendants. So we're all carrying this. And the story that you told really emphasized what you said earlier. The apology that was given in the now healed the trauma of the past, which creates a different future. And I this thing about the seed consciousness, I think that's the problem. We're not seeing ourselves as the seed that holds the stories of the past, is in now, and has a vision for the future. And it's all happening now. But we're dealing with, I'm a seed, and this happened to me as a seed, and this is why my shape is like this. I'm a seed. I'm a mango seed from Nigeria, but someone brought me to UK, but it's still gonna grow because it has a vision if we allow it to grow.
Yes.
And I want to segue that into something that happened for me. And I'm sure a lot of people can relate to it, because I know that when I hear truth, when I feel it, when it's downloaded, it's like, it just it's beyond makes sense. It's like, yes. So I've been part of a lot of groups, workshops and stuff, gatherings in the last few weeks. And there's been conversations about white people need to do their thing and black people need to do their thing. And then when we heal, then we can come back. And it's not so much about this affinity group. It's actually different from that. It's a little bit more on the extreme side. And I've been troubled. It's like, yeah, I get that we need to do our thing. We can have affinity groups and then we come together. But it for me, it looks like the conversation was coming from a place of pain and hurt, which I have compassion for. So, and one of the things I want to throw to you was this. But then this morning, I had started listening to your talk on Sunday, but I didn't finish it. So I was watching it this morning, and which the title was "Compassion is the New Frontier," something like that, right? So I was like, yes, we got to move to that place of compassion. That's the way forward. And then you use John Lewis's letter that he wrote to be made public at his funeral. But basically, we are the one to heal. It's kind of like what we're talking about. Like, yeah, we've all been traumatized, but compassion, love, and understanding is the way forward. And that's how we save the nation. That's how we save all nations. When I was watching, so I've agreed with compassion is a new frontier. But when I start watching those videos and images of Black people that have been killed by police officers, murdered by police officers, the Emmett Tills, all the clips that they showed, it's like somehow I could not access compassion. I started to get angry. And it was like the trick. Well, I got angry and I couldn't really, in my own understanding at that moment, move into a place of compassion, because I'm thinking, how can you do this to people because of the color of their skin? And as I was wrestling with that, I just heard, now you understand why some people have issues with moving into, the oneness consciousness, not the spiritual bypass. Well, we are one. Why can't we just get along? But the real work, because it takes real work to embody the oneness. And I found that it was hard for me to really sit into compassion with what was done. I was more angry than anything else. I know it's not just me. How do we integrate in moments like that? Thank God I'm aware of it. I became aware of it. How do we integrate the vision of the future, the truth that reminds us that compassion is a new frontier, and we must even be willing to forgive the oppressor? And at the same time, side by side, the things we're observing is just like, I can't, I don't know how.
But here's the thing. The only way you can get to where you're talking about is that you have to go to the oneness.
Start there first. Right?
That has to be the foundation stone upon which you stand. Okay. So what it looks like is this, where you stop othering. Because the moment that we can other, that's when we can get into the blame, and it's you and it's not me. And when we move from how could they do that to how can we do that? Just let that sit for a moment. Not how can they do it, but how can we do it? If we were to break it down, so in the inner, so in the outer, the macro and the micro, if we were to make this a family, for example, okay, and you're watching whatever, you're watching domestic violence, you're watching molestation happen, you're watching substance abuse, it's a family problem. That the one that's acting out is acting on something. Yes. Okay. And the healing that has to take place is collective. So the therapist is like, I want to see all of y'all. Yeah, your son's a crackhead, but you know what? If we gonna heal this, yes, I need all of you in my office. Okay, so it's just like a family. that as long as you're in the family, like, I don't know what's wrong with that boy. You know, he always getting himself in trouble. Ooh, that girl's so fast.
Mm-hmm.
She always opened up her legs to somebody, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But you got to ask yourself, well, why is she so sexual?
Mm-hmm.
What happened to her? You know, why is this kid a drug addict? What are they escaping? What really, you know, the bully is hurting.
Yes.
The bully is hurting. The bully is afraid. The bully is a coward. The bully feels weak. And we can look at the bullying, but it's that until we shift to the we, how can we? And I'm not saying it's easy. And that trip to Ghana, the first thing that Brother Ishmael did is he took, I mean, literally, like after we did hip hop radio, within 12 hours, we went to the slave dungeons.
Mm.
And he left the two of us there. That was rough.
God.
And came back. Now, I thought it was a little hard because he wouldn't even let us cry, process, or nothing. And then he took us to the rainforest. Those big, you know, where you're walking on these walkways that are suspended up above in the sky, miles around, and you're just walking and looking down and like all this oxygen from one environment to the other. But I never forget what he said to us. He said, "You're from America." He said, "You were the last stop on the slave trade. You are the descendants of the survivors of the survivors."
Yes.
And he said, "And look at you now. Look at the influence that particularly Americans from the African diaspora have on the world."
Yes.
And world culture and influence and soul and rhythm and beat. And he says, and he kind of put it in perspective. It's like, no, nobody would have liked slavery, but because we have been dispersed, the world has a chance to feel our soul.
Yes.
The world has a chance to get redeemed some with our spirituality and our shamanism and all these things that might not have gotten exported.
Yes.
You know, out there. And I mean, he just put like this whole other spin on it. And it's like, look, y'all are the strongest of the strong of the strong of the strong. Those of you who are here now. But it's going to take all of us. And when I was there, literally my ancestry, my descendants came over on the Mayflower. I can tell you like exactly who. The Mayflower. Not even like one of the other, the Mayflower. And I'm connected to George Washington's family. His mother was a Ball. And my great-grandfather, Charles Ball, was from that very famous Louisiana family. Oprah's had them on her show and whatnot. And he never had a white wife. Just my grandmother, my great-grandmother, and all these quote-unquote colored children in his will. And I remember sitting there and this long line. His father was in the Virginia legislature. I come from this long line of powerful white politicians. So that literally I'm like related to the founding fathers. I don't usually share that publicly. So I'm in these slave castles and I'm thinking, I mean, literally it was like, it blew a fuse between the white slave owners in my blood and the black slaves in my blood. And this, how could one side of the family do this to the other side of the family?
Mm-hmm.
You know, I've had to work all this stuff out within me, the native stuff that you talk about. I grew up with my great grandmother, Bertha Johnson, and two of her sisters, and they were half Cherokee. This long, long, thick, ropey hair, you know, like a horsetail, like, you know, down the bottom of their backs and whatnot. And her sharing how their father was a black freedman, and I didn't know the difference as a child, so I don't know whether he was a freeman or a freed man. But they were in Texas, and he would send his Cherokee wife across the Rio Grande so that all of them were born in Mexico to be born free.
Mm. Mm.
To be born free.
Mm.
And I have relatives who were Buffalo soldiers, who were the black soldiers that were sent west to kill off the buffalo, to starve out the natives. You know, I mean, it's like it's all in here.
That's right.
And in consciousness, whether it's in your DNA or not, that's the point we have to get to.
Yes.
Where this is all ours. And I am telling you, in a family, you don't solve the dysfunction until the family owns it. I don't care what it is. Until the family owns it and says, you know what? This has been our stuff for years, for generations. And we have to face it.
Yes.
We have to talk about it. We have to look at the impact that it's had on all of us. We have to find some way to make amends and love each other through this. So I don't care whether it's your individual family or whether it's a big collective national family, but that's the only way you heal generational trauma. Is you've got to face it and you have to own it as you being a part of it. Regardless of what part. Even if your part was just the head in the sand that didn't know, oh, my sister was being raped. Oh my God, I didn't know. Then that's your part. The clueless.
Right. The clueless consciousness, right.
But that cluelessness also aided and abetted.
That's right. That's right.
You know, that's why when people talk, well, I don't see color, it's like, shut up.
Yes.
Don't even say it. Just
shut up.
Save your breath.
I'm about to lose you as a friend. Just stop right now.
I know you think that you're trying to win some points.
Yes.
Or something.
You losing points.
Don't
yes.
say it.
Pretend to be clueless right now. Just for a moment.
Because all you're really saying is that I don't want to see my own color. That's what you're telling me. That you are so uncomfortable with your own, you refuse to see mine.
Yes.
And how are you going to help me when you can't see me? How in the world is telling me I'm invisible to you supposed to make me feel better?
Right. Right.
Nah. So just as I don't see color, we got to get over that. I don't see slavery. I don't see abuse. I don't see institutionalize this. I don't see that. I don't see. Well, that's part of the problem right there.
Mm-hmm.
You don't see.
So shut up and let the people who can see talk.
Yeah. Shut up and open your eyes.
Ooh, I like that. Right. Yes.
And start to see. Then you can be part of the problem. Then you can be part of the conversation. Then you can be part of the solution. But you can't be part of the solution when you can't see. You can't heal what you don't feel.
Simple. So Rev D, I want to ask you this question, and it's kind of like two different things, but I want to tie them together. So one of the things that just maybe triggers me a little bit more than a little, is something that I'm trying to be transparent here. I'm trying to be. It's this bull crap about black on black crime. That statement, I don't know. I think someone said Nixon came up with it. It puts black people in this thing like, look, they're killing one another. When we have a white man, a white boy go to school and kill children, we don't say nothing white on white. We don't say, I mean, that mindset. And then the other thing that I want to say about that before I drop the other question in is, because I know you're tied together, is if we're going to talk about black on black crime, then we need to talk about white violence, which is what white supremacy is about. So I wanted to ask you your thoughts on that, and then I'm going to tie it with something that may be completely different, but once again, I know you can tie it together. Yeah. So go ahead.
So I think what's getting missed when we talk about black on black crime is we're missing this piece that we're talking about now, which is the generational trauma.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So here's what happens with oppressed people. After a while, they get into what we refer to in diversity fields as internalized oppression.
Yes.
What internalized oppression is, it's when you start thinking of yourself and treating yourself the way that the oppressor would treat you. And that's when the ism is at its maximum efficiency. Mm-hmm. It's when the oppressor doesn't have to lynch you because you're so busy lynching each other and doing his work for him. Mm-hmm. So I do want to raise the alarm about this quote unquote black on black crime, because this is new. This is new. We weren't killing each other before. When we were back in the plantations and black close to the land, we weren't violent against each other. But now that we have gotten into these urban environments, and now that we have gotten into this like competitive thing and not viewing and seeing the sanctity of each other's lives, then we become a tool of the oppression and the trauma. And then you eventually become what you don't forget.
Yes.
So there is something, I think, to be said about it, but I don't think that the issue is with the black folk so much as it is that it is symptomatic of something else. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It is the evidence. It's kind of like what ends up happening is that when there's pressure put on something, it breaks at the weakest point. So if you have a table, for example, that has legs and four corners, and you keep piling bricks and bricks, it's going to snap. But it's not going to snap on the ends. It's going to snap in the middle. Mm-hmm. Because the middle is the point that doesn't have the support. Mm-hmm. So when we come up against these times in society where there's all these pressures that are building like one on top of another on top of another, the ones who snap in society are the ones that have the least amounts of support underneath them. But they're snapping because of the weight of all of the other stuff.
That's right.
That's where they're snapping. You know, it reminds me of that old rap song. I forgot the guy who did it, but he's like, don't push me, cause I'm close to the edge. It makes me wonder how I'm going under. And I've been at those moments when I'm saying that song, it just out loud, don't push me, because I'm close to the edge. So you take these people who are close to the edge and you keep pushing them and pushing them and pushing them, bam! And then they snap. And then we want to look at what's wrong with them. They're just acting it out. You can have parents who are divorcing and arguing. They may not hit each other, but their children will. When the kids are doing violence, we never think, oh, it's just a bad. If a kid takes a gun and shoots everybody up in school, we don't think it's just the kid. We know there's something else going on. And we need to lift each other up. And if you really believe that Black Lives Matter, then act like Black Lives Matter. Across the board, from healthcare, education, resources, jobs, housing. Act like their lives really matter.
Thank you for tuning in. Letting me know that I didn't need to combine my two questions. You're getting some echo. I don't know why. So I think this is going to be the last question. So collectively, we have a family member who is traumatized by trauma of the past and won't shut up. Just do the most stupidest thing in the world.
Wait, you got to say that again. You said collectively we have a what?
Can you hear me?
Now I can. I don't hear you.
Somehow I'm getting muted. Hear me now?
You're going in and out.
No?
But in and out.
Can you hear me?
Saying? Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so I said, let me try this. So we have a cousin globally is running Mars and doing all kind of crazy things, known as Donald Trump. And so when we talk about this, being able to see from a we perspective, election is coming up in America. He's talking about delaying it and just doing all kind of things. They're just sending kids back to school when, you know, it's not having a fuller debate, a conversation, looking at different perspective. In being able, we feel what we feel. How do we deal with that kind of family member so that we can heal collectively?
First off, we must switch that perspective. Okay? Donald Trump could die today, and that doesn't mean we're going to heal.
True.
Donald Trump is not the problem. Donald Trump is a magnifying glass. He's just allowing us to see it. Donald Trump didn't put himself in office. Donald Trump was elected. And there's still a constituency base that's been keeping him in power. There's too much attention being paid to Donald Trump as a person. If he gets out of office, in the next few months, we're still left with us. All the divisiveness, all the rancor, all of it. We haven't healed. What Donald Trump has been able to do is to successfully exploit tensions that have already been there, and with the help of foreign powers through our social media, exacerbating these tensions, and we're caught up in it. When the protests were going on about George Floyd, and in Minneapolis, this is before he started sending all these troops in, and in Minneapolis, when they were trying to torch the police department, I said then, before I heard any news stuff, I said, those aren't Black people. I don't even know who's out there rioting right now. But those are not Black people. When we riot, we are very specific. It's not loose, crazy all over the place. We don't burn houses. We don't burn schools. We don't burn churches. We don't burn the post office or the this or that. It's commerce. It's always symbols of commerce and money. And the last thing that we would do is try to burn down the Popo's house, because that is suicide. And ain't nobody up.
Right.
For suicide.
Right.
Okay? The point that I'm trying to make is that this is the new enemy. Divisiveness is the enemy. Now, I'm a baby boomer. So when I grew up, it was nuclear war. And we had to do these duck under the table drills in the desks and whatnot, and the nuclear fallout and what's going to happen, and, you know, and Russia and blah, blah, blah. The war now is not atomic bombs. It's not explosion like we dropped the atomic bomb in Japan twice. The new warfare is implosion. The new warfare is we tear each other apart. You know, when I just talked about Black on Black crime and how it's the evidence of the internalized oppression, where we are doing to each other what the white man would have been doing to us. So that's what's happening now in our body politic. Is as Americans, we are pulling each other apart. The way that Russia or China or the rest of it would want to disempower us. So we've got to be really, really careful here that what is at stake is our democracy. And what's going to make our democracy stand is not just I win over Trump, but how do we come out of this together, where we can create the platforms again to listen, where there can be dissent, where there can be disagreements of opinions, and that make us stronger and not weaker. But this desire that we have to want to silence the other half, this desire that we have to want to wipe them off the face of the earth, or just gain control of them, or to mute them or shut them up, it's the problem. So it doesn't matter whether Trump is doing it to us or whether we're doing it to Trump. It's got to stop. Got to stop. Democracy is an action. Democracy is an activity that requires civility, tolerance, and compassion. Where there is room enough for even the most dissenting voice to still have freedom and protection.
Mm.
So we have to switch this around. I'm going back to that model of the family. This is like trying to save the family now. How does my family come out of this hole? So that the abuser, the abused, the raper, the drug addiction, the whole, we got to be like grandma trying to save the family that's disintegrating with all of its stuff. No, getting rid of Trump is not going to save us. Now, he got to go.
Mm-hmm.
Don't
let's not get it twisted.
let's not get it twisted. He got to go.
Right.
But him leaving is not the panacea. Especially the way that he's playing it out now for his millions of disciples to keep the torch going.
Mm. Mm. Mm-mm. Yeah. And that's why I really believe what you said, not just believe, I know that we need a truth and reconciliation kind of gathering, because this is a time for us to really wake up. You know, we're moving from spiritual ignorance to spiritual awakening. And the bridge is that deep inner spiritual work. To be able to allow the healing to happen. So we can move in a way, bring ourselves, surrender, even with our own pain, bring that to the table so the healing can happen.
Yeah. And I'll end on this. And that seed analogy. Mm-hmm. We hear these words about all men are created equal and endowed by their creator with certain inalienable rights. But there's something we're not understanding. That's the preamble to the Declaration of Independence. It was written specifically to King George by these founding fathers, which was giving them the justification to challenge the king, to say, we have the right, when we think that the government is unjust and unfair, to turn it over or to start a new one. This declaration was, we're equal to you. It was not everybody's equal to us. You got to catch that. We are equal to you, but not everybody is equal to us. So that Declaration of Independence, that preamble that everybody has hooked into, is a seed. It is a seed of promise that has not been planted in fertile soil. So what they did is they made this declaration to him that we're as good as you are. But then they went on to create this constitution. We're in the second article. It starts talking about who's free, who's not free, who's being counted as 3/5 because you'll never be free. You get what I'm saying? It's like the infrastructure was built in another way. So we keep talking about this, everybody created equal, as though that's been our infrastructure. But it's never been our infrastructure. It's been a seed idea with an infrastructure that was counter to it. Our infrastructure has always been at cross purposes with this compromise mentality of trying to have slavery and freedom coexist.
Right.
And it can't. We just keep kicking this can down the road. And that's where we are now. This divisiveness that you see now, it's the same thing. If you take a look, I saw a map when Obama was elected, and they did an overlay of red and blue states for his election. with 1850 pre-Civil War slave states, free states, and it was the same map.
Wow.
We have not moved. The Confederacy is still alive and kicking, and folks are still fighting for those monuments because that consciousness is still there. We never finished the Civil War. We're still in it.
Right.
So it ain't about 45. This is generational trauma. It is intergenerational trauma. And we're going to keep playing it out generation after generation until we finally own it. That this, it's not the system broke, or this is the system.
That's right. Newsflash.
We can quit. Oh, I don't know what happened. I don't know what went wrong. No, it didn't go wrong. This is the system. It's doing exactly what it does. And until we can get out of la 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 land, that it should be anything else other than this. Carrots come from carrot seeds. This is it, but it doesn't have to stay this way.
That's right.
And that's where we can come in with the new vision. But it's not going to change as long as we're blaming this one and blaming that one, and it's Trump and it's Black Lives Matters and it's this one and it's Russia and it's this one's a hoax and it's the virus. Cut it out. It's all of us. And until I can claim everyone as a part of me, and everyone equally is part of this nation, and leave no one behind. People are angry because they're displaced. They're angry because they're not the majority anymore. They're angry because they're losing power. They're angry, you got to make it great again, because it's not great because they're not top dog. But that's a transformation and a transition we have to have compassion for and usher through.
Yes.
It's like when you have a new kid in the family and the baby's not the baby anymore.
Right.
You gotta negotiate that. So we got to get beyond all this sibling rivalry and all this stuff that we're doing.
Which makes me think, if to summarize the show, is something you said many, many years ago. We got to move from we won, we WON, to we are one, ONE.
Yes.
Yeah.
We're one, not we won.
That's right.
Yep. All right, my brother.
I'm ready. So speaking of we are one, you're serving a lot of soul food for people. So you have a workshop coming up starting tomorrow and a week tomorrow, Wednesday, August 5th.
Tomorrow, Wednesday, it's August the 5th, August the 12th. It's at 10 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time. It's 90 minutes. And you can look on my Facebook post, whatever, you could go straight to register. It's $50 for a couple of sessions, plus all the materials. You get the link with the registration, and you go to paypal.me/my name, Rev Deborah L. Johnson, just like you got it on the screen.
Yes, and that's coming up. And if you can't make it there because you have a doctor's appointment or you just feel like taking a nap, it'll be recorded. You can get a recording. And it's called Spiritual Tools for Social Political Times. So if you're inspired to step into the oneness in a real way, not in a spiritual bypass kind of way, this is a tool. This is something you can use. You learn everything you need to learn. And ain't you doing the visioning as well, Rev D?
Yes. Yes.
You've got a visioning gathering coming up.
Yeah, you can check out my Inner Light website starting tomorrow, and there's 3 times throughout this week. It's visioning for us as a larger community. You know, where do we go from here now with this virtual world, and where do we want to stand, and who do we want to be? And it's open to anybody. It's free, very interactive. Bring some paper and some markers, because we do drawings, and it's no lecturing and talking. We meditate. We share the things that are coming for us. It's brain stilling instead of brainstorming, and listening for divine revelation. So our steps will be ordered.
Yes. So it's innerlightministries.org, right?
Well, either one will get you there, but try the .com, because we're transitioning some sites right now.
Transitioning. Okay, got it. Check it out, register, and be part of the change. Rev D, I love you.
I love you too.
I love you. Thank you very much.
Peace and blessings to everyone. And I know that we've been talking a lot about the USA, and you might be coming in from other places of the world, but trust me, principle is principle. The same kinds of issues will be relevant to wherever it is that you are.
Truth is universal, and it will set you free.
Yeah.
You may piss you off first, but it will set you free. Thanks, Rev D.
All right. Take care.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to release this conversation. I don't have to add anything to it. I'll just be overdoing if I try. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for your comments. Thank you for living the truth, for saying yes to life. I want you to know that I love you. I bless you. I appreciate you. And I thank God for you. If there's anything here that you caught that shifted your consciousness, that made you go, oh, wow, never thought of it that way. Well, the way to make it a habit is to do something that aligns with that new thought. You put action behind it. If it was an aha moment, put action behind it. There's no point having an aha moment and not doing anything with it. We're releasing the show. This is John Stringer coming up next, as he reminds us that we are welcome to the house of love. You're welcome to your own heart. Thank you, India, for doing what you do behind the scenes. Thank you, New Jays, Kwali, Carol, Eleanor, I think it is. Let me see if I go back over here. Yeah, Kwali, Eleanor. I saw Rosu earlier. Annette, if I missed you, just don't take it personal. And if you do, forgive me. Okay? Thank you, thank you, thank you. Peace and blessings. See you on Thursday. I was going to say see you next week. Those of you who don't know, I have a new show called Ade Presents The Heart of the Matter. This is where I sit with a guest who joins me, and we get to do some soul work to get to the heart of the matter of what is hindering them, what they're hiding from, or supporting them to really surrender and say yes to what wants to be birthed. Every Thursday, what time is it? 6 p.m. Eastern, 11 p.m. UK time. Join me, and you can go to the Facebook Being You Podcast Facebook page to see the ones I've done in the past, so you get a flavor for it. It's time to go. Peace and blessings.
There is a space in my heart where I find the truth. I find me in you, a truth beyond what you may see now. But when we are one, we bring more good about. No matter who or what you call yourself or where you come from, yeah. There is a place in this world with open arms right now. Welcome to love. Welcome Welcome to peace. Welcome to our community. Be who you are. Let your light shine. We're so much more when we unite. You are welcome here. You are welcome here. I see with new eyes, allow and unfold, embrace and let go, trust the flow. There's a freedom in love when you follow your heart. Together we are stronger than we could ever be apart. No matter who or what you call yourself or where you come from, yeah, there is a place in this world with open arms right now. Welcome to love. Welcome to peace. Welcome to our community. Be who you are. Let your light shine. We're so much more when we unite. You are welcome here. You are welcome here. Breathe in and out. Slowly feel all that's around you. All that you feel, all that you know. Let it go. Welcome to love. Welcome to peace. Welcome to our community. Be who you are. Let your light